bakers. Today we are going to make white cake or cupcakes, which is what I'm going to do, and a vanilla buttercream icing. So let's get started. We're going to go ahead and preheat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we're going to get started with the first step for our cake batter. We're going to take one stick, 1/2 cup of butter, and we're going to go ahead and do the usual shortcut, which is to microwave this. And we'll go ahead and cut it up just a little bit so that it heats a little quicker for us. All right, so as you see, I've chopped that up into largish kind of chunks there. I'm gonna break those up a little bit. There we go. All right, let's get our cover. So we don't make a mess of the microwave. And this time I'm just gonna microwave it about 30 seconds. See how that works out for us. After this go round in the microwave, we're going to use a shortcut for softening the butter that we need for our icing. I don't want to melt it, but I do need it room temperature or softened. So I'm going to take some advice that I found on the internet, and we're going to follow that, those set of instructions. I can already hear that popping and crackling for us, so it should be good to go at 30 seconds. Great. All right, so let's go ahead and pop this out. Fabulous. All right. And you'll notice in the instructions that I put online for us, this is where we are going to pause and go ahead and start the process for softening that other butter that we're going to need for our icing. So I have a glass bowl here, and we need to measure 2 cups of water in the bowl. Actually, where are my cups? Interesting. This one doesn't have cups in it. All right, well, just to be sure, go ahead and measure 2 cups. And if you don't have a pitcher, you can use any microwave safe bowl with 2 cups of water. All right, very good. We're going to go ahead and microwave this for about 3 minutes until that water is really hot. Really what we're doing is we're just heating up the microwave, and we're going to use that steam and that heat that's created in the microwave to naturally soften the butter while we finish making our batter. So while we're waiting for that to be going, we're going to go ahead and cut up our other stick of butter. Now, of course, I could have taken this out of the refrigerator a couple of hours ago, but I did not, and I wasn't sure that you all would be able to pause in the middle of your school day and do that either. So I thought this was going to be a safe bet for us. Okay, so I've sliced that into smaller pieces. I go ahead and pop it in a microwave safe bowl. So they can have a little space. Great. All right, so once that water is done in the microwave, we're just going to remove that water out and pop this in. And in about 10 minutes, it'll get to room temperature in that warm microwave. Again, we're not turning it back on, we're just letting it sit in that warm microwave. Just double double checking. Yeah, 3 minutes is what the recommendations were. 2 to 3 minutes, but I figured I'd rather it go a little longer to make sure that that water is nice and hot and steams up that microwave for me. Let it work its magic on the butter. So we've got 1 more minute to go. While we're waiting on that, we can go ahead and start stirring up this melted butter a little bit. See, this would be too loose for the icing. So that's why I didn't want to melt it in the microwave. We just want to have it room temperature soft, ready to be creamed together later. But this is fine for cake batter. All right, good to go. Okay, we can just ignore that for a second. All right, 16 seconds left in the microwave. And then we'll be ready to pull that out. Give this a try. So fascinating how much information there is on lots of different topics, but especially about baking on the internet. All right, so be careful pulling out your water. It is going to be nice and hot. And then we're just literally going to rest the bowl in that hot microwave and ignore it for a while. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pour that hot water out there. Very good. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our cake batter while our icing butter softens for us. Okay, so next thing that we need to do is go ahead and add 1 cup of granulated sugar. I'm going to go ahead and pull out a fresh measuring cup. One that I had out, I used it for that water, so I don't want this sugar to stick on it. Okay, got our 1 cup of granulated sugar that we're pouring into that butter there. And then we're going to go ahead and cream this together. I'm just using my good old sturdy fork again. All right, and then we're going to add in the eggs 1 at a time. We're going to do our first egg. Get that beat in. Okay, and then we're ready to add our second egg. Okay, this time I'm gonna give my fingers a little rinse. Always important to have your clean hands throughout the process. All right. That butter. Egg combined with that butter and that sugar. All right, that looks fully combined. So we are ready to add in our vanilla extract. It is 2 teaspoons. And we're going to need vanilla again later for our icing, so I'm going to save that teaspoon. All right, that looks great. Okay, so now we are ready to add our flour. And this we're gonna do in a separate bowl because we need to mix it with the baking powder. So it is 1 full cup of flour. And then a 1/2 cup. Oven just chirped. It is preheated, but we're not ready for that yet. Okay, and then we're gonna add our baking powder in here. It is 1 3/4 teaspoons of baking powder. Okay, there's 1. And then I don't obviously have a 3/4, but I do have a 1/4, so I'm going to do 3 of these 1/4. 1, 2, and 3. All right, we're going to give this a whirl here, get that combined together. Alrighty, now we are ready to add, now that that's combined, we're ready to add it to our wet ingredients. And I'm going to save the flour bowl to whisk the powdered sugar later for the icing, so that can just kind of hang out there for right now. So we're going to go ahead and get this all combined together. Now you're going to notice it's still a bit dry. Don't worry, we have one last wet ingredient to mix in with this, but the instructions are to make sure it's well combined first. I like this bowl, but the shape can be a little tricky to make sure that any dry ingredients at the bottom get well combined. So that's why you're seeing me scrape up the bottom there. All right, that looks pretty decent. We're going to go ahead and add a 1/2 cup of milk. I drink skim, so that's what I'm using. That's what I have on hand. If you use 2% at home or 1% or even whole milk, all good. Whatever you have will be fine. Go ahead and put that milk back in my fridge. All right, and then we're gonna get this all combined together. So I know some of you have stand mixers at home. Certainly fine to use a stand mixer if you like. Again, I usually just have really good success with sturdy glass bowl and my, dinner fork. A little muzzle. Really nice, smells good too. Alright, and I'm not seeing any evidence of, dry ingredients stuck on the bottom, so I think we're in good shape there. I'm going to just do one quick pass on the sides, and then we are good to go. Alright. So this is the first time I've made this recipe. I'm thinking it's going to make 12 cupcakes, but I'm prepared with a second set in case I find I have extra batter. I want to make sure I make as many as I can. but I'm going to start by lining just 12, and then we'll see where we are. Now, if you were using a cake pan, the recipe calls for a 9x9. You would want, while I'm doing these liners, you would want to be greasing that. You can use Pam or cooking spray that has a little flour in it already, or you can use butter and then add a little flour and shake it out just like we've done in prior recipes. Okay. So now you're not going to need to fill these all the way up to the top. I'm starting by scraping the extra batter off this fork. Great. All right. So I'm just going to go like a spoonful at a time. And we're shooting for about halfway full. This might make 24 after all, which would be great. More cupcakes to share with friends. And I'm letting gravity help me out here. The batter is heavy enough that just holding it over the liner, it just kind of drips right off that rubber spoon. Oops, there we go. Sometimes you get a little too much help from gravity. These happen to be wax, like waxy paper liners that I have. Tinfoil liners work fine too. Whatever you have on hand. And if you had no liners but wanted to make cupcakes, you would just want to make sure you greased each one properly. I think that's a little trickier. Liners are the way to go. And it makes it easy to share. All right, so we're going to go ahead and grab our second set here and line these. All right, and I'll recycle that in a minute. Anytime I see liners on sale, I usually try and just pick them up. I don't tend to make as many cupcakes as I make muffins. I make muffins a lot. Oops, this feels like this stuff. Yep. Two really just wanting to stay stuck together. All right, I want to switch up my colors a little bit, so I'm going to separate those and pink. Nothing wrong with pink, but it's feeling like a lot of pink. Okay, so I'm going to put my extra cupcake liners where I hide them. Ready for some muffins in the near future. When we do our recipe share for the summer, I will share my banana bread recipe with you all, and that is what I make muffins out of a lot. Easy recipe, really tasty, great way to use up bananas that are kind of going south in a hurry. In fact, whenever I have bananas that are too overripe for my family's preferences, I pop them in the freezer is at the ready to make banana bread whenever the mood strikes. And remember, our butter is still hanging out in the microwave. Hopefully it's going to be the perfect temperature when we are done getting this batter in these liners. Excited about these. I'm gonna have this for dessert tonight after my dinner. Okay, we just might be a little shy. 24. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what we can do here. Oh, no, I think we can do it. Okay, so I am aggressively scraping the last little bit of batter out of this. Sure all of it gets off that spoon, and then that last liner there. All right, get that off the back into that little bare corner there. All right, there we go. We are in business. Okay, so let's go ahead and get these in our oven. Side by side. All right, so 20 minutes is when we're going to check them, but I'm going to go ahead and set a timer for 10 because I think I would like to flip them in my oven halfway through. Let me go ahead and wash my hands off. All right, now we're ready to get back to that icing. And we're making the icing, but it is going to end up having to sit off to the side for a little bit while we are waiting for our cupcakes to cool. You'd never want to ice something that's hot. It'll melt the icing. So, but we'll go ahead and make the icing now, and it should be good to go. All right. So the butter's been sitting in there for a little bit. My understanding is it should be able to, we may have to, well, we'll see how this goes. We may have to get a little creative and melt it just a tiny little bit for a few seconds in the microwave if we find it's not kind of doing what we want with the wooden spoon in terms of getting creamy. So I'm going to use my wooden spoon and scrape this into my little mixing bowl here. See, it was starting to, the edges of it were starting to soften. Maybe I should have cut it in smaller pieces. Might be a good learning lesson. All right, so we're taking this out of the microwave. We put it in our mixing bowl, and then you can either use a hand mixer, paddle attachment if you have a stand mixer, or you can just use a wooden spoon, and you're gonna kind of beat it until it's creamy and fluffy. Actually, this seems to be working out fine. So I'm kind of using the back side of the wooden spoon and kind of pressing it up against the side of my glass bowl there. It's kind of sticky. seems to be mostly cooperative, except for wanting to stick to the spoon. But we're going for smooth and fluffy. Baking is a bit of a workout at times here. All right, friends, that looks pretty smooth and pretty fluffy to me. So I'm going to keep this spoon around because I'm going to Alright, so now we're ready to turn our attention to the confectioner's sugar. I don't have a sifter at home. If you have a sifter at home, you can use a sifter. But another recommendation, I'm just wiping out that little bit of excess flour that was in there before. Okay. So I'm going to do the other trick that I found online, which is to just use a whisk and get it stirred up, get any lumps out of it that way. All right, and I am using my dry cup again. So this is 2 cups of confectioner's sugar, which can be rather messy. Trying to get a good angle on this. Oop, okay. There is one heavy-handed cup. And let's go for our second. You guys, but I like a really sweet icing. I don't think there's such a thing as too sweet. So I'm going to take my whisk and just kind of work through this here, getting out any lumps that might have settled in there while it's been hanging out in my cabinet. We don't use a ton of confectioner's sugar in my house. We use it as a topping when we make French toast, and occasionally in a dessert recipe, but not that often. Although, I don't know. We'll see how this icing turns out. If it's a winner, I'll be using a lot more confectioner's sugar. All right, I think that is good to go. So we are going to go ahead and gradually combine that in with our butter mixture. And I think to do that, what I'm going to do is take that measuring cup again and kind of use it in little bits. There. Whoops, that was kind of messy. I'm doing about 1/2 cup at a time. In hindsight, maybe a wider bowl might have been better, but this is what we've got going, so we're going to work with it. about 2 more passes with this. Whoops. All right, sorry to your parents for making a mess of your kitchen in advance, huh? All right, it's definitely getting quite a bit thicker as we go along here. Dust myself off here. All right, you probably heard my timer. That first 10 minutes is about up. So again, I like to flip my trays halfway through to help make sure everything bakes evenly. All right. Okay, we're going to take a pause, flip those pans, and then we'll be ready to add the last 2 ingredients into our icing. All right. So it's looking good. We're just going to give that a little flip. I was a little worried these wouldn't rise, fill the tins enough, but it really does fluff up nicely, so I think we are good to go. I'm going to go ahead and check mine in about 8 minutes. I know that's under the minimum, but you definitely don't want to overcook cupcakes. Nobody likes an overcooked cupcake. All right, so we are ready to add our last 2 ingredients, which is vanilla extract and then some more milk. This one up first. So this is 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. So we're going to get that combined in here. And then it is, needs some milk. I believe it's 2 tablespoons, but I'm just gonna double check that on my ingredient list here. Yes, 2 tablespoons. Milk back in my fridge. Alrighty. definitely loosened up that icing. So it's gonna make it easy to spread once our cupcakes are out of the oven and fully cool. Again, don't ice a warm cake or cupcakes. Okay, and I was thinking, we do happen to have some food coloring in the house. You obviously don't have to add food coloring to dye your icing, but since I have it, I figured I might as well enjoy using some. I have a neon set, so I think we'll go with green. Start with just a couple of drops of that. Can always add more later. Oh boy, that is kind of fun. Now if you wanted to do 2 different colors, you could have, you know, put half in a separate bowl and dyed half one color and half another color. I think that looks kind of fun. I do have some leftover sprinkles from another project laying around, so after I ice, I'll go ahead and add some sprinkles to my cupcakes. At least some of them, probably not all of them. All right, so when you're ready to ice your cupcakes, a flat spatula is always best, you know, unless you have some fancy piping equipment that you can use to do kind of a more rounded stroke. I usually, though, just kind of do it with a flat spatula. So since I'm going to use this later, I'm going to go ahead and use this to get the rest of this ingredients off this spoon here and kind of scrape down those sides. So that'll be ready to rock and roll again once my cupcakes are cool. All right, friends, was messy this time, super messy, but fun. So just waiting for my cupcakes to finish. I'm going to check them in 3 minutes, and again, they're done. If they're a little spongy to the touch, I always take something like a metal skewer and pop it in and out. It should come out clean. If it's doughy still stuck to it, it needs some more time. But I'm pretty confident that by 20 minutes at the latest, it will be totally done. I'm gonna let those cool, then ice them with my super fun lime green icing and some sprinkles, and I'm sure it's gonna be delicious. Thanks for baking with me.